Father, thank you for bringing us together. I pray for the hearts, souls, and minds of every man, woman, and children on earth. I pray for humanity. I pray for our safety. I pray for peace to come through all the land. But if war does come, I pray for strength and perseverance and for good men to keep spreading the gospel and to save as many souls as believers can. Amen. I thought we'd start off with something kind of funny, ironic, and I don't know. I watch this with my kids sometimes. It's a good little old movie, but I thought that somebody might find this a little interesting. All right, this is only for entertainment, research, purposes. I don't own or copyrights or patents or anything of that nature on any of this. So, that's that. But, this is a movie about birds that have a town. And these pigs come over on a boat, steal their eggs, and take them to an island. Now, it's not really a suggestive type thing, and like I said, a lot of my kids are too young to really get it anyway, but I thought that y'all might find that interesting. And isn't it funny that the facial hair on the green pigs? It's not funny, but it is ironic, right? And then one of the scenes, let me see if they have it on here. Oh yeah, you see this eagle right here? I think they're looking for guidance or answers about maybe the pigs or something, so they go up to the eagle, and he's a bald eagle. Well, he's supposedly this idol and looks over like he's kind of like an idol and looks over the town or whatever. Well, they go up there and the guy's just a lazy, slothful person, and he's an egomaniac, and they sing a little song that says, "Mighty, mighty eagle, rescue me," and they say something, and bankruptcy. Is that a kind of a jab at our nation, that I don't know. It's just, like I said, it's not funny, but it is ironic, it's crazy. It's a good little old movie. It don't have like a lot of just outwardly suggestive stuff, but like I said, we've watched it a few times. Anyway, we're gonna go over David. David was a man after God's own heart. Let me turn this. David was a man after God's own heart. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go over when the Lord chose David. And that's in 1 Samuel 16 and then Psalm 78. And then we're going to go over Goliath. And that's the same book, but it's in 17. And then we're going to go over Saul's jealousy. And that's in 18. And then I thought that maybe later I'll just come back to some of this because nothing really popped out at me this morning. But in 1 Samuel 13, it says, "But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart." And this is talking about David. "And the Lord hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee." And in Acts 13, I don't know the context of Acts. I just put this in, but it also says he raised them up unto them David to be their king, to whom also he gave testimony and said, "I have found David, who was the son of Jesse, a man after mine own heart, which shall fulfill all my will." So we'll jump right into 1 Samuel 16, and it says, "And the Lord said unto Samuel, How long wilt thou mourn for Saul? And I believe Saul was, let's look it up. I don't want to do that. I'm going to be lazy this morning. I want to look it up. Okay, so Saul in the Old Testament, his name means asked for. He was the first king of Israel, and the Hebrew name of Paul. So, in the New Testament, Paul was also Saul. But the Hebrew name Shaul is used of 4 persons in the Old Testament. Alright, well, that's true, but okay, this is Genesis, 1 Chronicles, and then 1 Samuel 9. Saul, however, primarily refers to the first king of a united Israel, a tall and handsome son of Kish, from the tribe of Benjamin, chosen by God and secretly anointed by Samuel. Saul was later selected publicly by Lot. Despite some people's skepticism, he proved himself an able leader by delivering the city of Jabesh Gilead, and was acclaimed king at Gilgal. The numbers in 1 Samuel 13 are incomplete in the Hebrew text, but Saul's reign is traditionally dated about 1050 to 1010 BC. He made his capital at Gibeah of Saul, probably Telefuel, 3 miles north of Jerusalem, where excavations have uncovered. From Gibeah, Saul drove the Philistines from the hill country and fought other enemies of Israel. A tragic figure, Saul's heart was initially changed. He had even prophesied. His presumptuous offering, however, and violation of a holy war ban led to his break with Samuel and rejection by God. And that's in 15. The Spirit of the Lord left Saul and was replaced by an evil spirit that tormented him. David is introduced as a magician who soothed him by playing the lyre. The lyre, it says Lyre. I know what it says. My accent, I can't help it. After the Goliath episode, Saul became jealous and fearful of David, eventually making several spontaneous and indirect attempts on David's life. Okay, so that's that, right? We like to make sure that we're not, and that, like I said, most of the things that I've really looked in that book are accurate. But if I got anything wrong, I'll reprove that. But like I said, that gives us context in what we're diving into in 1 Samuel 16. And it says, "And the Lord said unto Samuel, How long wilt thou mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill thy horn with oil and go. I will send thee to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided me a king among his sons." And Samuel said, How can I go? If Saul hear it, he will kill me. And the Lord said, Take an heifer with thee, and say, I am come to sacrifice to the Lord. And call Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show thee what thou shalt do. And thou shalt anoint unto me him whom I name unto thee. And Samuel did that which the Lord spake, and came to Bethlehem. And the elders of the town trembled at his coming, and said, Comest thou peaceably? And he said, Peaceably. I am come to sacrifice unto the Lord. Sanctify yourselves, and come with me to the sacrifice. And he sanctified Jesse and his sons, and called them to the sacrifice. And it came to pass, when they were come, that he looked on Eliab, and said, Surely the Lord's anointed is before him. All right, sorry, I can't talk this morning. Let's look up Eliab. Eliab, maybe? Eliab? Okay. All right, that's in Numbers. My apologies. Okay, it looks like Eliab, but this says, first son of Jesse to pass by and be rejected when Samuel searched for king to replace Saul. And then we know who Samuel was. Let's look up Samuel. So Eliab was the first one that said, no, that's not the one I'm looking for. So Samuel's the one looking for the next one, right? So it's Samuel. So let's look up who Samuel is. But Eliab was the first son of Jesse. So he said, and he sanctified Jesse and his sons. So Eliab was the first son of Jesse, and he was the first. He was the first one that said, "This ain't the one I'm looking for." So let's see here. Okay, it says the books of Samuel thus point to several theological themes that can guide God's people through the generations. Leadership is the guiding theme. Can God's people continue with a loosely knit organization as in the day of Judges, or must they have a king to judge us the same as all other nations have? Samuel does not explicitly answer the question. God does not wholeheartedly accept kingship as the only alternative. Kingship means the people have rejected God. Still, kingship can flourish if the people and the king follow God. Saul showed God's threats could be realized soon. A new family from a new tribe would rule. This did not mean eternal war among tribes and families. This is the books. Let me see who Samuel is so we can get on with it. But so it says here, personal name in the ancient Near East meaning Sumu is God, but understood in Israel as his name is God, or name of God. The last judge, first kingmaker, priest, and prophet, who linked the period of the judges with the monarchy. Born in answer to barren Hannah's tearful prayer, Samuel was dedicated to the Lord before his birth. As the firstborn male to open Hannah's womb, he was given to the Lord for all his life. Eli raised Samuel at the Shiloh sanctuary. As a child, Samuel grew in stature and in favor with the Lord and with men. Samuel met God and received his first prophetic mission as a young lad. God's initial word to Samuel concerned God's rejection of Eli's family from service as priest as punishment for the sins of Eli's son. And this here it says, Samuel served as the prototype for future prophets in tension with the kings of Israel and Judah. The sins of Samuel's sons and the Philistine threat led the elders of Israel to appeal to Samuel for a king like all the nations. Samuel rightly understood this call for a king as rejection of God's rule. Samuel warned Israel of the dangers of a monarchy. We can learn something from this today, boy. Forced labor, seizure of property, and taxation. Isn't that funny how there's nothing new under the sun? As I'll say again, forced labor, seizure of property, taxation. All that's happening today. And they want that in much, much higher degrees, my friends. And yeah, before anointing Samuel as Israel's first king, Samuel's recording of the rights and duties of kingship set the stage for later prophets to call their monarchs to task for disobedience to God's commands and for overstepping God's limits for kingship in Israel. It's funny. Funny. It's not funny, but okay. And so this is after he looked on Eliab, and he says, But the Lord said unto Samuel, Look not on his countenance, or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as men seeth. For man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. I'll repeat that. For man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. Then Jesse called Abinadab, and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, Neither hath the Lord chosen this. So that's number 2, right? Then Jesse made Shammah to pass by, and he said, Neither hath the Lord chosen this. That's number 3. Again Jesse made 7 of his sons to pass before Samuel. And I don't know if that's saying 7 more or 7 total. And Samuel said unto Jesse, The Lord hath not chosen these. And Samuel said unto Jesse, Are here all thy children? And he say, There remaineth yet the youngest, and behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, Send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. And he sent, and brought him in. Now he was ruddy, and withal of a beautiful countenance, and goodly to look to. And the Lord said, Arise, anoint him, for this is he. Then Samuel took the horn of oil, and anointed him in the midst of his brethren. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. And Saul's servant said unto him, Behold now, an evil spirit from God troubleth thee. Let our Lord now command thy servants which are before thee to seek out a man who is a cunning player on a harp. And it shall come to pass, when the evil spirit from God is upon thee, that he shall play with his hand, and thou shalt be well. So I wonder if that's talking about David, because it's saying that David played the lyre, or the lyre, however you say it. I think it's lyre. But we'll pick it up when David fights Goliath, because that's a pretty lengthy one, I believe. But just to follow up with that, in Psalm 78 it says right here, he says, He chose David also his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds, because you remember it says he was out in the pasture keeping the sheep. From following the ewes great with young he brought him. And I don't know if that's female sheep. Let me see. I got a Strong's. TUVW. $57.63. To suckle, give milk. Milch with young, ewe great with young. From following the ewes great with young he brought him. So obviously a female is the one that's going to be milked. So anyway, to feed Jacob his people and Israel his inheritance. So he fed them according to the integrity of his heart, and guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. Alright, y'all have to forgive me. Doing these does help me kind of slow down and actually retain some of the information, so I enjoy them. I'm not the best at this, but I'm doing what I can. Okay. So we're going to go over the Goliath deal. This is where he fights Goliath. It's pretty lengthy. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shoco, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shoco and Azekah, and Ephes Dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah. and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits. So I've always been told that a cubit is about it's either the end of your fingers or your elbow, or from your wrist to your elbow. I can't remember. But a span, I had a dictionary. I can't remember what a span is. I hope it's in here, but if not, we might just go on. I know it's probably pretty dry at this point. Span. An English unit of length equal to 9 inches. So I've always heard that a cubit was about 18. So I guess a span is. So if you say 6 cubits, if it was 20 inches, that would say 120 inches, and a span is 9. So you take 6 from that, and it'd be like what? It would be like 118, something like that, 117, something like that, 117 inches. So if it was 120, that would be 10 foot. So he's just shy of 10 foot. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail. So this is an imposing feller here. This dude's big. He's bigger than Shaq. And the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs. So he ain't just big. He's armored up. This dude is ready for war. And a target of brass between his shoulders, and the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him, and he stood and cried to the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are you come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and you servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men. Okay, so 7 total sons, and David was the 8th. Okay. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul, and the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle, and the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem, and the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run it to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000. And look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning, and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went, as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench, as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. So I'm assuming that it says left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage. I'm like, maybe that's like referencing holding horses. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the man that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the man, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride, and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner, and the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spoke, they rehearsed him before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. That's what David said. He said, My heart is willing, I have courage, and here in a minute he'll show you why, or say why. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said moreover, The Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion, and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and put an helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. I wonder how tall David was, or how big he was. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee. And I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, and all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. So I imagine there's probably a pretty good crowd watching this. So as I read this passage, I say God's going to prove something to Goliath. He's going to prove his might and how he's with David. And he's also going to prove something to everybody watching. The Lord certainly does work in mysterious ways, but also in very direct and honorable ways too, right? And it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag and took thence a stone and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose, and shouted, and pursued the Philistines, until thou come to the valley into the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Shuraim, even unto Gath and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. And we'll pick it up now with Saul's jealousy. I know that was pretty. And I've never really looked at the maps of it, but I wanted to kind of, because I don't know the areas on these maps very well, but he's always trying to something new, you know what I mean, and maybe the geography of some of this stuff. This looks like a pretty good one here. So see, yeah, there was Ekron and Gath. Yeah, it says, was it Goliath of Gath? I can't remember. But this is the area here. I mean, I don't know if that's modern day Gaza, but you can see it's all the area there. And then I guess it's somewhat close to the Dead Sea. But yeah, it's very interesting. A lot of history in that part of the world. And then we'll go to Saul's jealousy. It's 6 through 30 in this passage. So we'll go over that. So it's 6. And it came to pass as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the women came out of all cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tabrets, with joy, and with instruments of music. And the women answered one another as they played, and said, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very wroth, and the saying displeased him. Excuse me. And he said, They have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day and forward. And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. And David played with his hand, and as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice. And Saul was afraid of David, because the Lord was with him, and was departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from him, and made him his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Wherefore, when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, because he went out and came in before them. And Saul said to David, Behold, my elder daughter Merab, her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me, and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul said, Let not my hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. And David said unto Saul, Who am I? And what is my life or my father's family in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king? But it came to pass at that time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given unto Adriel the Maholathite to wife, and Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David. And they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. Saul said, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Wherefore Saul said to David, Thou shalt this day bring my son-in-law into one of the twain. And Saul commanded his servants, saying, Commune with David secretly, and say, Behold, the king hath delight in thee, and all his servants love thee. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servants spake those words in the ears of David. And David said, Seemeth it to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man, and lightly esteemed? And the servants of Saul told him, saying, On this matter spake David. And Saul said, Thus shall ye say to David, The king desireth not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. Wherefore David arose and went, he and his men, and slew of the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full tale to the king, that he might be the daughter's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, to wife. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was yet the more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy continually. Alright, we'll shut it off there. But I hope, I hope that was something, these helped me retain it a little bit. But if y'all know anybody that don't know Jesus as their Savior, please give them the gospel and maybe encourage them, today, because, everything that's going on with everything is, I don't want to say hurting kids and bombing them and having famines in the land, something God enjoys, but it was written years ago. And people that are doing that to the vulnerable people, they're going to have their day, because it says in the Bible, they have their reward. There's nothing for the wicked to look forward to, but we do, because we have an everlasting kingdom and mansions and streets of gold waiting on those believers and those that have accepted Jesus as their Savior. Y'all have a good Monday. I think it's the 26th. Y'all have a good day.